Thank you. The gentleman from the Northern Mariana Island, Mr. Sablan.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for holding today's hearing, and I thank the witnesses for being present. A caveat, my two youngest are school teachers. One teaches English in the 10th grade, and the other is a special education teacher. And so I do have a little bit of interaction on whenever I'm home with two teachers. But Dr. Contreras, 3 months ago, the students in my district in the Northern Mariana Islands went through Super Typhoon U2, the second strongest storm to hit U.S. soil in history. Multiple schools were lost, which means these students are now going to have their courses in FEMA-built temporary tent classrooms like Quonset huts. Our public school system serves around 10,000 students on 3 islands in the Western Pacific where typhoons are common. You state in your testimony that you have spent time teaching in different schools, districts across the nation. If you and your school district colleagues would design a school at this scale for students in this environment, what elements would you say are the most important?
One moment, she's going to repeat what you said because of my hearing loss. Thank you. I think certainly there are ways to design schools to make sure that you are less likely to experience some of the massive damage that you experienced in your district or that we experienced with 3 of our schools in Guilford County. However, that does take significant funding. You would have to speak to someone who is an expert in that specific design. But I think that speaks to the need for the school funding and for making sure that districts are receiving adequate funding, not just for building schools, but for building schools that can withstand earthquakes, tornadoes, hurricanes, which is more complicated, complex, and does take some additional funding than just renovating a school. That takes significant funding.
Thank you. And I have another question. Not only is the percentage of funding for IDEA actually at its lowest it's been in decades, but we also have a Secretary of Education and a President who failed to prioritize students with disabilities in their annual budgets. In the fiscal year 2018 budget, President Trump proposed a massive cut to IDEA funding, and in the fiscal year 2019 budget, he proposed flat funding, which would have resulted in an essential cut. Schools in the Northern Marianas and across the nation need the resources to train teachers and support students with disabilities. In fact, in the insular areas, the Marianas, Guam, American Samoa, and the U.S. Virgin Islands are not included in the special education preschool grant program under IDEA. So Dr. Contreras, how has the deprioritization of IDEA funding impacted students, teachers, and decisions you have made about how dollars are spent?
Absolutely. Not prioritizing IDEA is causing significant problems in schools. In fact, in Guilford County, we have 1 nurse for 1,700 students, and teachers, classroom teachers, are having to catheterize students themselves because we do not have adequate staff to meet student needs. We're not able to handle the transition plans accordingly, and we cannot provide the state-of-the-art kind of instruction and technology that those kids need and deserve to meet their IEP goals. So flat funding would not be a way, in my educational opinion, to meet the needs of the most vulnerable students in the district.
Thank you. I don't mean to cut you off. I do have a question for Ms. King, if I may. Ms. King, can you share from a parent's perspective why it is important to provide more funding to the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act to support students with disabilities?
Yes. Funding Title I and IDEA would give our children from less disadvantaged schools more resources that they need. We have students in our classrooms, the teacher-to-student ratio is huge. It's much larger. They can't get the one-on-one that they need to be successful, not even with creating their own individual planning for them to be successful inside of their schools. The fact of thinking that children with special needs is not important to put funding to is very difficult to think about as a parent or as a grandparent who actually has a son right now that is classified as having a disability. My daughter is going through things right now to get him help, and to think that we don't think that our students need or have the want, the capability of having any kind of resources of funding is ludicrous to me as a parent.
Yeah, thank you. I will submit other questions for the witness to answer, but we will be holding additional hearings on IDEA and Title I. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr.